And now, the only survival show to survive being smacked in the back of the head by an old coot. In this episode, we sit down with longtime listener, ITRH forum moderator, resident old coot, and friend, NavyJim. He's going to share with us how he and his wife have stayed engaged in preparedness since the 1950s, how preparedness has changed over the decades, and his take on preppers in the media as someone who's been in broadcasting since he had to ride a dinosaur uphill both ways in the snow to the gun store, also known as 1967. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode 143. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. NavyJim, it is great to finally have you on the show, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So now, for those that don't know exactly who I'm talking to today, NavyJim is the moderator of the ITRH forum and butt of our resident old coot jokes. For that, I'm sure if NavyJim and I ever meet in person, I'm going to get a smack on the back of the head. You've also helped us out with a lot of great advice over the years. You've shared with us your experience, some of which is actually from experience in the media. So we've always been very appreciative of that.
I've worked, just to give the listeners a little bit of thumbnail, I started working in broadcast television news in 1967. Worked for CBS here in Florida, then went up to WCBS in New York City, went from there over to WKBD TV in Detroit, and then kind of got disenfranchised with news and went into other forms of video production, entertainment, technical, things like that. So about 15 years ago, I decided I was going to retire and come back here to Florida. I did, got bored in about 6 weeks, and went out to this new local 24-hour news station and signed on. And I've been with them for the last 15 years. I started out as an operation manager, done news stories. I've been a live truck operator. Currently, I am in charge of the on-demand function for Bright House Networks nationwide. So news is kind of something I've been into for a long time.
Yeah. Just a little bit of experience there.
On several levels, both the national level with WCBS and then the 24-hour concept of news, which of course was brought on by CNN.
Mm-hmm.
We have stations all over Florida and in Detroit, Birmingham, Alabama, Bakersfield, California. And we talk back and forth and exchange stories, and we're affiliated with CNN. So a daily basis, I'm involved with some sort of news programming, if not actual news itself.
Wow. And that's why we have you on the show today, to talk about preppers in the media. And, that, and we just like the hell out of you. So
yeah, well, you said about slapping you in the back of the head for the old coot thing. I think I'm the one that started that. So it's only fair. And yeah, I am an old coot, and I'm happy to be one. I got into prepping when I was a very young kid because we lived here in Florida, and the Cuban Missile Crisis scared the absolute bejeebus out of us.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad and his uncle, who were both in construction, went out in the backyard and built this absolutely state-of-the-art, amazing bomb shelter, held 12, had air filtration systems, and just all kinds of stuff.
So
like
wait,
I said, that was
that before or after riding the dinosaurs to school both ways uphill in snow?
That was a little bit after.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, we'd planned on using the dinosaurs for barbecue at some point if the world did blow up.
That's a good plan.
Yeah, well, so prepping's changed quite a bit since back in those days. I mean, back then, the only thing we were worried about was the nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
Drop and cover, like crawling under my desk at school is going to keep me from getting blown away by an atomic bomb.
Yeah. So now you were saying prep has changed over the years. And so originally y'all's primary concern was dropping cover and other great hits like that. And I know originally a lot of people that are new, especially to preparedness, and aren't quite as geeky as maybe I am and have looked back at its evolution. It was originally referred to as retreaters, which is probably about where your dad and your uncle started. So walk us through that. I mean, as far as like the mentality and how it's changed over the years. Now, before we hear that answer, one quick thing for listeners today. In the Rabbit Hole is kept safe and sound and on the air by supporting listeners just like you. Head over to ITRH.net today to find out how you can get some really great member-exclusive survival benefits and help us keep the lights on. You can support us for as little as $2.50 a month. That's less than the price of a coffee from one of those coffee chains that doesn't even support your rights. We've had a number of listeners step up and show us what the show means to them by becoming part of the ITRH Armada. But we still have a ways to go to really help us fill in the financial gaps and keep the show safe and sound. Again, visit ITRH.net today to become part of the ITRH Armada, get exclusive content and benefits. You'll be helping us keep the lights on. And now, back to NavyJim's answer on how preparedness has changed over the decades.
Retreaters, survivalists, preppers, it's changed names over the years for one reason or another. I'm not exactly sure why. Back in when I was late 20s, early 30s, most of the prepping that we did was kind of basic, not much beyond getting the camping gear together. We had the advantage then that the Army-Navy surplus stores back then actually were Army-Navy surplus, and you could pick up surplus military rifle for $25.
Wow.
You could Alice packs, you name it, you could pick it up for next to nothing. They were stacked on the floor. Nowadays, it's pretty much all aftermarket stuff that's been shipped in from China. So, we had our stuff together. Food was more difficult. They did have some prepackaged protein meals that were supposed to last for 20 years. I never actually tasted one because I think they'd probably be pretty crappy.
Yeah.
Whereas today with the freeze dried and we look at our preps in terms of layers, in that our first layer is getting through in a short-term emergency from 1 to 6 weeks. And that's where, our bottled water, our different types of foods that we have stored, especially ones that are frozen at this point. We have a generator that would keep things going for a while. But then the next level up is longer term things, freeze-dried foods. We have a supply of that put away. And then our next level up is seed banks and things that we can hopefully, within that period of time, grow something to eat. That and hunting and fishing down here was a big thing. If you talk to Hillbilly, I think he spends half his time out there in a fishing boat.
Yeah. Oh, I think he's trying to get back to that mode these days.
Yeah, I think all of us are.
Yeah, exactly. So now, over the years, has there really been any difference other than goods available? Has there been shifts as they've gone from retreaters to survivalists to now what we're calling, I guess, ourselves as preppers?
Yeah, to some degree. A lot of it stays the same. The underlying reasons for it, like I said, back then you had the commies, you had the nuclear war, you had other things. Today, there are almost a limitless supply of things you can worry about, from the caldera to economic collapse to pandemic to all of that. We never really looked at a whole lot of that back at that point. Preppers today think, and of course with the program on TV, the doomsday preppers, preppers, we get a bad rap.
Yeah.
But back in those days, I think we got a worse rap, actually.
Really?
I think that's the reason it went from survivalist to prepper.
Huh.
Because survivalist was some guy that was living out in the woods shooting at people.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that from the 70s and 80s, yeah.
Yeah. That philosophy has changed a bit. Certainly the technology has changed a bit. And I think as people have more and more, there are more preppers now than there ever have been in history, in my opinion. And the type of people, if you look at our own forum and look at this site, the people that are into prepping aren't the country boys sitting out there or the military. We certainly have all of those.
Yeah.
But we have everything from computer techs to rocket scientists. there's a lot more brain power in prepping these days than there ever has been. And there's a lot more money to be mined from prepping for different companies that want to come up with a product.
Yeah.
I mean, like the water bob. We're talking about a plastic bag here for $30.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a bad product. For what it does, it's a fine product. It's a single-use product. And you have to decide how you want to set your prepping up. But there are so many things you can buy now.
Yeah.
Just almost limitless between the toys, the knives, the guns, the water storage equipment, the chemicals for storing, you name it. There's a company out there selling something for it.
Yeah, it's almost gotten to the point where if you can't find it, you're just not looking hard enough. And you must not be looking very hard at all.
You must not be looking at all, because, I mean, they kind of put it right in your face if you go on any of the prepper sites. I mean, it's, there's a couple columns of stories and the rest of it's advertisements. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, it's the same thing if you look at the magazines on the shelves, the gun magazines and whatever. There's a couple, 3 stories to get you to buy the magazine. The rest of it's advertisement.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, every now and then I see something in those ads I just can't live without. Then I go to the NavyJim's wife and say, please. And, she sometimes lets me have it.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we all have to pay the bills somehow. So, and the traditional way has always been advertising.
Well, I'm fortunate that I don't have. The one thing I hear so many preppers talk about is that their significant other, their spouse, whatever, isn't into prepping. They don't understand what they're doing and why. My wife is as into prepping as I am, and possibly more.
Wow.
We have different philosophies and we look at different things. I'm more of the bullets, beans, and Band-Aids kind of guy. And she's the long-term food preparation, medical, technical end of it. So the two of us together come out, I think, with a pretty good plan.
That sounds like a very nice balanced pair you two are making over there.
Well, she's a medical person and she's been in 40 years. So we all know that if the world ever does blow up, medical people are going to be worth their weight in gold.
Oh, yeah. Part of the reason, beyond the fact that I just love the little girl to death, that is part of the reason I picked the young lady I'm with now.
Now, do you have a supply of equipment that she could use?
Since she's in the dental field, that makes it a little tricky because it's going to quickly turn into kind of 1800s hand drills. But we have been, over time, storing up more things and more technical things that we could actually use long term. And part of that has also been as her experience level has grown and as she's been slowly seduced by the prepper side of things.
Well, as you said, it's, go back to the 1800s. But we had the advantage of knowing. So you can rig up a hand drill to a flexible shaft like you'd use on a Dremel and get an awful lot of speed out of that. So you could actually put a dental bit on the end of that and come up with something that could be, feasibly usable. Some of the low-speed burrs don't have to have a lot of speed to do the job.
Yeah.
In dental, anybody's had a toothache knows that, I'd rather get shot.
Yeah.
So it's something you're going to have to deal with in a post-disaster situation. Depending on the emergency, possibly even dental injuries, broken teeth, things like that, from an emergency situation. Seriously seen a lot of people coming out of car accidents with broken and missing teeth.
Dental emergencies tend to be things that, without a lot of training, it's not like first aid or something like that where you can just kind of put a Band-Aid on it or duct tape a wound back together or things like that. You really have to have somebody that knows what they're doing to start rooting around in your mouth and repairing things.
Yeah, of course. the old joke, they tell you never put anything sharp or metal in your mouth, and the first thing the dentist does is get this big hook and reach in there and start scraping things.
Yeah.
But, so, that's something that you have to look at as far as your own, your household makeup as to what services you can develop that will be valuable, not just to you, but to the community. The community is very important. Wherever you go, you need some sort of community. The
idea of, unfortunately, I think ITRH has never attracted the people that tend to want to be the lone wolf, kind of 80s style survivalist. And I think community has really, especially with everybody on the forum and everything like that, community has become such a big deal and such an integral part of ITRH. And really more and more the survival community as a whole. It's become more emphasized over the last few years, it seems like.
It is. I see a lot of factioning in the survival community between the people that are more worried about the government situation.
Mm-hmm.
But you got those, and then you've got, if something were to blow up, I'd be worried about the government. There's no doubt about it. They've never done anything right yet, and I don't care who's in office.
Yes.
But it's a matter of there's so many things that could go wrong that you can't cover everything. So you have to develop some kind of plan that will let you be a little more generic.
Mm-hmm. So now, and I think we touched on this a little bit ago, which was that, and maybe it's just my perspective, but since you've been in it much longer than I have, does it feel to you that there's been a resurgence? It seemed like it was kind of big in the 80s, and then it got a really bad rap because of it. Hopefully it was just a few nutballs or just pictures on magazines. I was never really sure what it was. But it seemed to really kind of go away for a while, and then we had Y2K, and then we had 2008, and 2008 seemed to really fan the flames of
Yep.
preparedness and survival. Has that been your take, that there was kind of this long lull, and then all of a sudden people came back into it? Or was that it always was actually kind of steady, and then all of a sudden the Y2K and then the 2008 stuff really ramped up interest in the community?
Since my dad got me into it, there has been a stable base that has been all the way through. There's always somebody out there who's doing the prepping thing. But the populace of it does wave back and forth. It ebbs and flows. Right now, I think we're at a peak, as you say, starting, around 2005, 2008, whatever, during the 50s, obviously, because of the situation with the Russians and the Cold War, it was big. Then you get into the 70s and with the gas shortages and whatever, there was another problem. Then you get into the Iraq wars and it's back again. So yeah, it waves. It depends on what's going on in the world. It depends on economically, actually, how good we're doing. The fact that we're actually doing pretty good economically now, I think, is helping to drive it. Mm-hmm. Because the money's out there. So yeah, it comes and goes.
It seems that the media has taken a sudden interest in preparedness and survival. Do you think that's just the doomsday prepper shows, that those kind of took off and they said, oh, hey, here's something kind of exciting, a new shiny toy that we hadn't really had, something sensational that we can work with that maybe we didn't really think of it before? Or is that another thing where it has always been in the media, but lately it's just the reality shows have made it much more so?
Well, it's been in the media, again, off and on, depending on what's going on. There's always been the occasional story here and there, about the guy who bought the old missile silo, or somebody who's, gone off and lived in the woods. But I don't know that media really is paying any more attention to it now than it ever has. Mm-hmm. Media has so much on its plate right now to pay attention to. We've got the whole ISIS situation. We've got the presidential race in 2016, which is in full swing right now.
Yeah.
Vote for whoever you want, but I'm voting for Donald Trump. Just to piss everybody off.
There you go. And I think we even have Ebola trying to make a resurgence, I was reading yesterday. And it was like, that was buried down in the headlines. I had to dig for that one.
So the media is looking for something that will keep their numbers up. The day of the news media being a facility that brought you the news because you needed to know it doesn't exist anymore.
Do you think it ever really did exist?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it did. Back in the 50s and 60s, the Cronkite era, the Murrow era. Yeah, I think these men were legitimately journalists. And I think that was their goal. And Cronkite in particular had the power to say, no, I'm not going to go with that because I don't think it's a good story. Having had the privilege of actually working with him on a number of occasions, he was the kind of guy that if he didn't want to do it, he wasn't bloody well going to do it. Nowadays, all media facilities are run by conglomerates. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is advertising numbers and added value situations. There are some places, like the news station that I work for, I think we have the best news station in town, and in Central Florida, actually. We cover everything from Tampa to Daytona. But we are there not just to bring you the news, but because as a cable company, we offer something that nobody else does. The broadcast stations, the dish TVs, the other things can't do, which is give you a 24-hour local news station. So there's an added value. So we're not just there for news, we're there for added value. We're there, obviously, for advertising revenue. And that's why news as we know it is changing so fast, it's almost impossible to keep up with it. Start off with, back in the day, the newscast, came on at 6 and was over at 6:30, and then the national news came on at 6:30 and was over at 7. Well, now it's 24/7. News comes to your mobile devices. It comes and finds you. I've often wondered, there's a lot of things I notice. I don't know if there have always been this many earthquakes, or it's just that I set my news aggregator to alert me every time there was an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much news impacting me, and I'm getting it obviously on my television, but I'm also getting it on my cell phone and my laptop and my iPad and all of that. So all of those entities are also news. And that's another revenue stream, and that's another number stream for these stations to hook you. The old newspaper, another 20 years, there won't be any in newspapers. It'll be like vinyl records. There might be a couple of them out there for nostalgia, but that's it.
Yeah, they seem to be going the way of the dodo.
Yeah, and financially, that's the way they are. They've already consolidated most of the news print companies in the country. And like I said, in the next 20 years, there won't be any of them left.
Do you think any of them will stick around with an online presence, or do you think that they'll just kind of fade away and it'll go to mostly these blogs and television news sources?
I think that there may be a few that stick around, but I think most of them are just going to die. And most of that is not because they're not good at news organizations. It's because they're not willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
Newspapers fought for years to do their news thing and not change, and they did, and of course now nobody wants it anymore.
Yeah.
The millennials, the new people that are coming into the situation of hearing news, they want it fast. They want it now. They want it on their cell phone. Old guys like me, I like to watch it at night on the news and then be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that works.
Yeah, that's interesting that it's changing that way. Does it give you cause for pause and concern about how people consume news? That they're just consuming so much of it so often and maybe not paying as close attention to it as they should?
Actually, I think they're paying a lot more attention to it. And I think that's one of the reasons we have so many people worried about the government, so many people worried about the climate. The news has given you something to worry about. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And like I said, what's driving them is getting the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If, when the daily Nelsons come out, you want to know, what did my station get? Are we top of the list? Because, especially in broadcast stations, the higher your ratings are, the more you can charge for advertising. That's the bottom line there. So they will do whatever it takes to get on top because they're going to make more money if they do that. The weakness that I see coming up is actually not in the news organizations, but in the actual reporters themselves.
Really?
We are churning out by the hundreds young, intelligent reporters out of broadcast schools, out of colleges, out of all sorts of things. They come into news. Most of them last between 3 and 5 years. That's it. Then they're done. They go off and get a job in PR or as a public information officer for the local police department or hospital. But very few of them stick around long enough to work their way up the ladder from reporter to anchor, which used to be the old way. And because of that, then we have a whole new group coming in. So the average age of a reporter these days is considerably younger than it used to be. We're in a period of time where there is no draft, so few, if any of them, have been in the military.
Yeah.
So they don't have that exposure. Most of them are, yuppie types who are, more interested in their car or their clothes or their hair or whatever they are than other things like we would be, a new gun or this and that.
Yeah.
So many of the reporters I've worked with have never even actually picked up a gun. So I saw a story on the air a while back, and the reporter in the story said, and he had over 100 rounds of ammunition. I thought, well, I have 100 rounds of ammunition. I got that in my back pocket.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah. So I went, I said, 100 rounds, that's just 2 boxes. That's not even an average day at the range.
Yeah.
They had no concept of, it's 200. That's a big number. Why would anybody need 200 bullets? So it's, you can't expect them to understand guns, to understand, the nomenclature, the difference between an assault rifle and a military style rifle and a modern sporting rifle, whatever the NRA wants to call it.
Uh-huh.
And there's nobody out there teaching them. And of course, coming out of liberal colleges, they all have very liberal ideas. I listen every morning to CNN on the way in, partially because I want to know who's going to be making speeches that day so I can pull them for our on-demand system. Mm-hmm. And the amount of slanting, not necessarily slanting, but stating certain things in ways that make them less good or understandable. They have a bias and it sneaks into what they're saying and not hard to catch.
Yeah.
A lot of people will hear that bias and go with it. Mm-hmm. Rather than, like I said, the old days, Cronkite would tell you what the news was, and then you figure out what the hell it meant. And that's an old news concept. Nowadays, they want to analyze it and tell you what it means, and
have 5 people on a panel all screaming at each other, and you can't hear one of them.
Yep, I kind of like that part. That's fun. And like I said, I mean, there's so much going on in the world today that people in general are splitting up into groups like I've never seen before.
Oh, the divisiveness. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. The divisiveness has just become amazing. And it's funny, I often try to think of things as, is it just because I'm more aware than I used to be? Is it just more because I'm paying attention more closely than I used to, as opposed to being in my 20s and having my head up my butt and being more concerned with chasing girls and drinking whiskey than I am now? Or is it really that things have got that divisive and that heated?
I think they have. I think they absolutely have. It's unfortunate that a crazy kid went up there and shot up the church in, was it North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it actually caused more race problems than it helped by pointing out that there was a race problem. So I don't know how to get around that, being in a situation where we have to be so politically correct that we really can't say what we want to say.
Yeah. It's like a married couple tiptoeing around some sort of issue without just sitting down and having a good old-fashioned fight about it and just getting it all out in the open and getting it done and over with.
Yeah, and I live in an area that's very heavily Hispanic. Most of my neighbors I live in this multicultural neighborhood that's got every kind of person you could think of it: white, black, Jewish, Protestant, Catholic, Hispanic, Arab, you got it, you name it, we got it here. Mm-hmm. And we get along here. We just have a ball together because we have one thing in common. We're all old. You have to be 55 or older to live here. So, it's not that people can't get together. It's just they have to have something to hold them together.
Yeah.
And right now we're so factioned that we don't have something to hold us together as a group, whether it is patriotism or whether it is a particular religion. Mm-hmm. There needs to be some sort of glue to hold society together. And right now I see that glue coming apart.
Yeah, it's coming apart at the seams and pretty fast. And I think that coming back to that, as far as the divisiveness and everything else, it seems preppers have always been portrayed, at least from my perspective, always been portrayed in a negative light by the media. Why do you think that is? Do you think it goes back to a more liberal education background, and preppers tend to, or survivalists or whatever you want to call it, tend to be more into firearms and things like that, and tend to, but not always, be more conservative? And now we have a middle road where it just, libertarians just pissing off everyone, which is entertaining to me. Is that an accurate portrayal, or do you think I've missed something there?
No, I don't. The media has to do one thing. They either have to make it look silly or make it look really great. So with preppers, It's easy to make them look silly.
Yeah, there's a lot of fodder.
Yeah, and there are some guys out there that are absolute dingbats.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know what you can do about that, but every group has their nuts.
Yeah,
we have our share.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to sensationalize it, otherwise it doesn't sell. I mean, that's the whole concept behind Doomsday Preppers, is you take somebody and you sensationalize it.
Mm-hmm.
These guys do not, at least the way they are portrayed, do not represent the prepper community as I know it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are a few guys that they find that are nuts. But, I do a show right now that we're out looking for unusual, strange things, and I'm looking for the nut because that's what sells. That's what gets the numbers.
Yeah. So what's your opinion? I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings about the prepper reality shows. What are your thoughts on them?
I don't much care for them. The concept of putting a show out there where you could actually teach something, it won't sell.
Yeah.
There's no money in it, no marketing in it. And making us look ridiculous, I don't think is that great for the cause, the movement, whatever you want to call it is we're in. And in fact, there is no such thing as a typical prepper.
No, we've certainly learned that on the forum.
Yeah, I'm more of what you would consider a homesteading concept prepper, where my idea is getting a place where I can raise some crops, having enough in storage to get me to the point that I could raise crops, being as ready as I can for whatever happens to come the way. Other people are more into the military end of it, having lots of guns and doing that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't have a lot of guns, I do, but my wife will tell you that. Although she has more than I do.
That's impressive.
The last 2 new guns we bought were both hers, so I'm in pretty good shape there.
It sounds like it. As an aside, when I was thinking through the topics for this season, I thought, you know what I need to do? I need to do a 1911 show in honor of NavyJim.
I mean, who doesn't make a 1911 anymore? Everybody
makes one.
Everybody says, the AR is the big deal. You can interchange props and doing that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the 1911's been doing that since 1911.
Yeah. So. Going back to the media for a second, do you think this is a long-term fascination, or do you think the current reality show, prepper and survivalist reality shows, if you think that'll kind of burn out anytime soon?
No, I think it's going to burn out. I think any particular type of show over a period of time will burn out. A number of companies have tried to keep hunting shows, fishing shows, shooting shows going, and ultimately they all fail for one reason or another. People lose interest, or the show doesn't keep up with the quality that it needs to have for people to watch it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's going to fade away. I don't think they're paying a whole lot of attention to us now. And you got to understand, the prepper shows the reality shows are cheap. They're really cheap to make. Whether it's dirty jobs or whatever, you're basically talking about 3 or 4 people. Mm-hmm. You got a field producer, you got a talent, and you got 1 or 2 camera people. And that's your investment.
Not a whole crowd of actors and sound engineers.
Or all of the other things that go into it. And because of the way you do it, you can do it in a non-union situation, and then you don't even have to pay scale. Mm-hmm. As far as the Doomsday Preppers, I don't know if they get paid, but I don't think they do. But I'm not sure. So yeah, Naked and Afraid, that's me naked in the woods would be a scary thing.
So it's you naked, other people afraid is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. Yeah. No, I have very tender feet. I always wear boots or shoes. Wife who goes across gravel parking lots in her bare feet has, calluses that she can walk on the beach without getting burned. And me, no, 2 seconds out in the woods and I'm going, ooch, ouch, ooch, ouch. So, yeah. Even, the dual survival shows and whatever, I think they've sort of run their limit. I mean, even shows like Mythbusters, which I think is a terrific show.
Yeah.
It's kind of hitting the skids because they kind of done it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's need to find somebody new to ridicule.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think at some point everything becomes stale. Not that ITRH has a huge level of production, but even with the number of episodes we have, it's you still sit and go, okay, we've been over this, we've been over that. Is there a new and interesting way to go over, underwater BB stacking today? I don't know. What do we, And so it does become tricky to not, and I could definitely see this in the media too, or traditional media, I should say, of not giving into, okay, we'll just put something out, just fill airspace. And to really have to be forced to sit down and go, okay, this really has to be quality. It has to be worthwhile. It can't just be about just doing it.
Yeah, and it has to make money, which means it has to be entertaining.
Yeah.
And if it's not entertaining, nobody's going to watch. You're going to get no numbers, and you're going to get no money. So nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah, and we can only watch so many tinfoil hat crazies on Doomsday Preppers.
In reality, prepping is not that complicated a thing.
No, it's really not.
It's very basic when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maintaining, supplies, water, food, all the basics. It's very simple. We've made it more complicated by coming up with all sorts of gadgets and gizmos and sterapins and everything else that you can get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is in any long-term situation, we're going to have to learn to live the way they did in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
The process of getting to that point is going to be deadly for the vast majority of the population.
Oh, yeah.
People that don't know how even to garden, much less grow a crop. People that don't know how to go out in the woods and actually shoot a deer. I'm sorry, between me starving to death and Bambi buying it, Bambi's done for.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even like killing anything, but I am in agreement with you. If it's between that animal's life and mine, sorry.
Having been raised on a farm where we would go out and generally we did about 200 chickens a year. And so we would harvest the chickens all at the same time. And so I, grew up with that, so it never bothered me. Young people today, they've never seen where their hamburger is coming from.
Yeah.
They have no concept that it was actually a living, breathing animal at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they would have to go out and actually kill something would be beyond their concept. Every now and then somebody surprises me. There was a young lady a couple days ago that her airplane crashed, that she was flying in with her grandparents, and she managed to cross country out of some pretty rugged terrain, 16-year-old girl.
Really? I didn't hear about this.
To civilization. So sometimes, they surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
You're ever out in a situation like that, what you have to do when you don't have an option, I think sometimes surprises people.
Mm-hmm.
People have never actually been out in the deep woods to have no concept of how disorienting it can be.
Mm-hmm.
I think preppers are always going to be there. I don't think they're going to be as in the media as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the media's got a lot more to deal with, in particular, gun people.
Yeah.
The media doesn't like gun people. They don't understand guns. They don't understand shooting sports. The NRA, quite frankly, doesn't help. They are very confrontational, and you need to do a little more negotiation than the NRA is doing. I mean, I think they do great work, and it's wonderful politically, and some of the programs they have, especially for the wounded warriors, is terrific. But they come across as very confrontational, and I don't think that helps. Of course, the Democrats do the same thing, but
yeah.
What are you going to do? People that aren't raised with guns, who don't understand, probably never will.
Yeah. Don't want to.
One of us takes them out and teaches them.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we've had a couple of people that say, I really think I need to get a gun, but I don't know what to do. My wife, who I think is one of the best handgun trainers I've come across in a long time, makes it very non-threatening for them. She doesn't pull nasty tricks like I do. I have a really nice Model 28 Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum, and I'll throw in 38 target loads in the first two cylinder holes, and then a couple of 357s in the next two cylinder holes, and then a couple of 357 Magnums in the final, and watch them, escalate up the ladder as they go. So,
That's
but
evil.
my wife doesn't do any of that. She's nice. She treats them nice. Starts them out with a 22,
Yeah.
which is what you need to do.
Yeah. You've been in it for so long. What keeps you in prep?
What keeps me in prep is that I don't prep, I live. Our camping gear, which is a lot of our preps, is something that we take out 3 or 4 times a year and use a week at a time. Our food storage is something that we constantly use. It's constantly rotating. We're constantly updating it. As I said, we store in layers where we have what's immediately in the house, in the fridge, frozen, and on the shelves in the kitchen. Then we have our storage room where we have the longer term things, the canned goods, that sort of thing, which is the next layer. And then the third layer is the freeze dried, which we would only open up if, things got bad and because they have such a long shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a last layer, which is a seed collection that we would use to grow if we had to. And we do actually plant a garden every year, and we rotate those seeds as we go. So it's not prepping. I'm not worried about the world ending.
Mm.
I'm living a lifestyle that is as simple as I can make it and trying to keep my head about me in case something happens. I mean, there's so many things that can happen, whether anything from losing your job to any number of major disasters. There are things you can do and things you can't do. I mean, we have hurricanes here in Florida, or we used to. We haven't had one in 10 years.
Has it been that long?
Yeah,
Wow.
actually, it was, I think it was 2004. We had 4 of them within 3 weeks. And we haven't had a major hurricane in the state of Florida since 2004.
Oh, wow. Knock on wood.
Well, that's it. This is such a transient state that nobody's ready for it anymore.
Yeah, I'm seeing that in Houston.
Well, you've gotten so much rain and flooding and everything up there. Somebody ought to be paying attention.
Yeah, and that was what we watched during the floods, was the very small handful of natives that are left here watching all the transplants basically float away. And it's kind of sad in a way, but at the same time, you're like, well, what are you going to do? I guess if you're not already of that mindset and not somebody who would investigate and say, okay, what are the hazards of this area? Which most people aren't, unfortunately. You end up with a whole bunch of people unprepared for the normal natural disasters and that Mother Nature throws at us.
Yeah, that you should know they could happen, whether they be earthquakes or tornadoes or hurricanes or wherever, depending on your globe. There's something everywhere. Take your pick.
Yeah.
We have a situation here where we've talked to a few of our neighbors, and they know we have a generator. Hurricane situation, should the power go out, they know to bring their stuff to us for our freezer because we keep it cold. We in 2004 weren't prepared as well as we should have been and went 28 days without power. That was a lesson, which is what really brought my wife on board as far as prepping was concerned.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, she was good with it before, but after that, she was all for it.
She was good with it before. Now she's a participant.
Yeah, well, actually, she's more of a participant. She's the driving force in some ways. She keeps us on a better path. It's a more complicated path. She's gotten me into it also, dehydrating food. And we have a fairly decent storage of dehydrated food that could last us for over 6 months just on the dehydrated stuff.
Oh, wow.
Any prepper out there is not into dehydrating. They really need to think about it because it is amazing. Not only can you store foods for massive lengths of time, years and years, but you also reduce the weight of that food markedly.
Yeah, it is amazing how much of everything that we consume is made up of water.
Yeah. Well, and that's, like I said, we look at every plan we can look at. And if we had to bug out, then it's our freeze-dried food we take with us because it's the lightest. I don't know that we would do anything different as far as living when it comes to prepping. Now, yeah, I mean, we have, a certain amount of firearms, and I have probably a fair amount more ammo than most people would store, but then I reload, so it's kind of a hobby. It's therapy. I sit there pulling the handle down for hours on end. But, and I go to the range and, shoot off 500 or 600 of them. So comes back and gives me something else to do. We've been doing it long enough. We have everything in place. We have the gear. we have food storage enough for over a year. We have the water. We have, over the years, picked up all kinds of different skills and training. In case anybody doesn't know, my wife is in the medical profession, so would be in any emergency situation a valuable commodity. She's had emergency room experience and a number of other things. So we really don't prep. We just live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key to staying into it, is that it's not something that we're frantic to do. It's just a lifestyle.
All great information. I think that's probably some of the best prepper advice I've ever heard anyone give.
That's what you get from the old coot.
Well, thank you again, NavyJim, for coming on the show, and we will trick you into coming on again sometime soon.
Well, hey, I enjoy the show. Have enjoyed it for years now. I was looking the other day when I joined the forum. My God, I did not realize it was that long ago.
Time do fly. Yeah, I think it's been 5 years now, I think.
Yeah. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. That's going to wrap up episode 143. Join us next week as we sit down with Daryl of FloridaHillbilly.com fame. We're going to discuss one of the most loved, hated, and perhaps overlooked preps, becoming a ham radio operator. He'll share with us his knowledge and experience, and together, we'll attempt to turn a typically dry topic into an entertaining lesson in the importance of comms. Remember, In the Rabbit Hole is kept safe and sound and on the air by supporting listeners just like you. Head over to ITRH.net today to find out how you can get some really great member-exclusive survival benefits and help us keep the lights on. You can support us for as little as $2.50 a month. That's less than the price of a coffee from one of those coffee chains that doesn't even support your rights. We've had a number of listeners step up and show us what the show means to them by becoming part of the ITRH Armada. But we still have a ways to go to really help us fill in the financial gaps and keep the show safe and sound. Again, visit ITRH.net today to become part of the ITRH Armada, get exclusive content and benefits. You'll be helping us keep the lights on. From the Lone Star State, till next time, stay safe and sound.